Hi everyone, and welcome to the Neurodiverse Universe podcast with myself, Ben Holmes from Autism and Neurodiversity Coaching. Today's guest is Katie Friedman, who is an ADHD coach with ADHD herself and also an ADHD coach trainer. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you, Ben.
Good to have you here. So as I do on all the podcasts, we go through some questions to start with, and then we'll sort of see where it takes us after that. Obviously with a focus on neurodiversity in general. So first question, when were you diagnosed, if you have been diagnosed with ADHD?
So I was diagnosed with ADHD as part of a sort of bigger diagnosis during that second winter lockdown in, I think it was 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
And then I had to kind of do it all again because I didn't realize that if you get an ADHD diagnosis through a psychologist, you can't access meds. So I had to do it again with a psychiatrist. And I thought, there's a lot that people don't know, and it's not really fair, this. So yeah, I did a lot of learning by doing and spending.
Yeah, makes sense. Before I carry on, did I get your job right, or do you want to just clarify what it is you do before we just move on to the rest of the questions?
Yeah, I am an ADHD coach trainer, but I'm also a neurodiversity coach trainer. So lots of coaches, whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent, come and do a day's training called a Goldmine Deep Dive. And it's all about how they can serve those, 1 in 5 clients that are probably neurodivergent, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, cool. So back to the questions bit. So we got that bit out of the way. That's good. So talked about when you were diagnosed. So the next bit is what does knowing you have ADHD mean to you, or diagnosis, or whichever? What does that mean to you? Is it good, bad, any difference?
Yeah, for me it was huge. It felt like real validation. I have to say, I did also get, my original diagnosis was autistic and ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had done all this reading on being autistic, and I had literally no other narrative on neurodiversity other than autistic. And I was so desperate to fit that box because I wanted something. I actually think I put on the performance of my life. It's like, I cannot fail at this. I actually, so I got both because I passed the ADHD with flying colours. But I realised the person who'd helped me get to a diagnosis in the first place was my childminder, who is both. And she's younger, and she's just really well informed, and she always knew all along. And when I said, I think she thinks I'm autistic, she looked at me and she went, I don't think so. She said, you might want to add ADHD and see what she says about that. So we did, and I passed with flying colours. And I talked to her after, and she's like, I really don't think you are. And anyway, I learned loads more about ADHD after that, and realised it was like I'd sort of tried to jump in with 2 feet, and it wasn't quite the right swimming pool. It's what it felt like. Yeah. And then I was really cross, because it's like you finally get somewhere, and then it's not actually the right, it's still the Goldilocks thing, which is not quite right. And it's like, oh my God, story of my life, and the rejection and all of that. And then I actually went back to the psychologist, because what I started to realize was, do you know what? All of these professionals, I'm not sure they know what they're doing. And the more I learned, the more I realized, no, they don't. They really don't have very much training whatsoever, particularly, I have to say, around ADHD in this country. I think there's a lot more knowledge about autism and being autistic. Not that it's well framed or well informed, but there's more knowledge. And so, yeah, I actually went and sort of had a bit of an argument with her, and sort of said, this is the reason I think you might have got it wrong. And she said, no, these are the reasons I think I've got it right. And the reason, when she went through the reasons, I realized how much I was fabricating. And I went, oh dear. And I think that's a really interesting one, is the sort of make believe. Like, one of the things I said was around having a photographic memory. I don't have a photographic memory. I wish I did. But what I do have is an ability to remember visuals for a very short period of time in order to get through exams. If there's lots of pretty colours, that's not a photographic memory. But we didn't have that much nuance in the diagnosis. Do you know what I mean? That level of detail wasn't there. And so I'd sort of read it as, oh, photographic memory. Oh yeah, I have that. And, you know, and you're like, yeah, that's how we get things wrong, I think.
Makes sense.
I wish I had a photographic memory.
So are you at that stage now where, so are you adamant that you're not autistic, or where are you still on that journey, or are you at the end of that journey in terms of the autism side of it?
So I don't feel hugely strongly. I definitely feel like there's a lot of people in the community, either autistic or ADHD, who are starting to say that they're both. And I think that's an interesting place in time, because I do think, I wonder whether as we broaden out our knowledge of both, we realize, are we talking about the same thing and different shades of? So I am willing to be open to that. But I genuinely don't think, I think I feel slightly fraudulent, particularly around the strengths that often autistic people tend to have, and some of the things they find really challenging. Spoon's theory does not work for me. So I do think there's a difference around energy management.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes complete sense. Yeah, that makes complete sense. So to me, I understand the logic behind that. I mean, like with the spoons theory, that is 100%, I resonate with that for me. So I definitely have that. I refer to it as a different name, but it's the same thing basically. And I know when I first spoke to you, God, it wasn't like was it a couple of years ago? I don't know. I don't know, whatever it was, a year ago, I don't know. But I know when we used to have calls, you used to say, even though, so I said I was autistic and ADHD, and you said you was, because you thought you was at the time. But you said you didn't really resonate with a lot of things I said in an autism sense, and you said that I presented as more autistic than you. I can remember you saying that then. When we used to have calls, I can remember you saying that, like you say, I don't really have that issue. When I was referring to X, Y, or Z. So
I remember it as well, Ben, more in like almost like a capacity thing, like your project capacity as well, like to have sort of 10 things on the go and to have quite a scaled idea of what you were doing. I was kind of like, wow. And a sort of propensity for detail that I was a bit like, I would be completely overwhelmed with that. And I think that's another part of it, really. So yeah, I you know, ultimately we're both neurodivergent, and there's lots of crossover, right? But there's also difference, and there's also the fact that, you know, I'm a middle-aged woman and you're a man, and there's a difference in how all of it is experienced and presented.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have, just quickly, do you have any sort of sensory issues at all that you sort of deal with? Like, so obviously looking at the typical autism ones, is there any that you feel you have?
I do experience sensory, but sensory is something that lots of ADHDers experience. And I have to say, what I really notice is I really experience sensory when I'm tired.
Yeah.
And that's when I notice and I really don't see it as such. I think I tolerate quite a lot of things when I've got quite a lot of energy, but at night I get huge relief by having low level lighting. I've noticed I like to avoid main roads with the crazy dog I have, because I'm just like, it's too much going on, and I find the heavy A road that I live near winds me up, and so I'm starting to go the back roads, but it never winds me up in the day.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So in terms of look at the excuse me, the ADHD side of it, so have you, well, first question is, how did friends or family or both react? Did they react at all to say, no, I'm ADHD? Was there any response to that?
So you got to remember that I came out as autistic and ADHD, and then have kind of had to, different iterations and things. I think, I'm really lucky because I have a lot of friends and ex-colleagues who now work in sort of diversity and inclusion. So they're pretty open-minded. And I've had a lot of, help with certain, how to find my voice and get into certain spaces. People have been very generous. I think it was more tricky with my family. Obviously, I think, it's funny, isn't it? I have, since coaching lots of different people who are kind of at a similar stage of life to me, late diagnosed women, I do hear, amazing stories where, older parents are so embracing and supportive. And I do kind of go, oh, right, it's possible then, or I run a support group for ADHD UK, and there was like someone in her 70s there. And I just thought that just gives me so much hope that, like, that's how curious we can be, that in our 70s we'll rock up and still looking to understand ourselves and to reauthor our whole lives. Like, that's brave. And I love that. I have to say, I get a lot of, I experienced that as well with my mother. And I sort of have to go, yes, well, I know you do, because you are too, but we're not owning that. So I have to talk very much about myself.
Yeah.
And that's a bit weird.
I understand.
And slightly farcical. My dad's more open-minded. I pretty much diagnosed him openly, and he's open-minded. Is he curious or willing to read a book? No.
Yeah. Well, at least it's some progress, I guess, isn't it? It is some progress in that sense. In terms of support you've had, because I always like to ask this question. So you've said about sort of friends being very supportive. Have you had any support, from any companies or doctors or anyone in any field? Has anyone given you any support? Have you wanted any support? So since your diagnosis, a lot of us just get left to it, but then in some areas of the country they get decent support. So what's it been like for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it really highlights inequity, doesn't it? I'm lucky because I'm a coach, so I'm already in that kind of space of being in supportive communities. I've got lots of people I can do coaching exchanges with, and then I ended up training as an ADHD coach, so that was hugely therapeutic. I mean, I did spend any revenue I'd made off coaching on training. But what I did get is access to work support for this year. And so I got a very small grant to get some coaching paid for, which I fully welcome. And I think that it's really made me realize I just think it's outrageous that you would get a diagnosis and not get anything after that, because actually the support is the space and time to process. If you think about how often we are very speedy brains, both autistic and ADHDers, and if you have found out halfway through your life, and you might be, you know, supporting a family, or, you know, holding down 2 jobs or whatever, and then you're processing that, which it's not one little compartmentalized part of your life, is it? It's every breathing blooming moment of your life.
Yeah.
That is huge. And you're then going back over all the years of your life and trying to understand and reauthor memories. Doing that on your own is a recipe for collapse, frankly. And I just think that's what needs to be done in community, with a professional who knows the terrain and can normalize. And, you know, have I had that? Yes. Do I get it a lot with community? Yes. And do I provide it for others? Yes. And I just literally can't imagine this journey without it. And then on top of that, in terms of support, a real eye-opener for me was getting a virtual assistant.
Yeah.
And that has been a very interesting journey in not only asking for help, how much help, why did I only ask for this much? Why is it that this, you know, white man in a very similar position to me gets 20 hours and I got 3? And what's that about? And, you know, it's that sense of like, we often don't know that we can even ask for help. So the thought that that it's all equal and we all just go and ask for what we need is utterly ludicrous. And so many people aren't even aware of it. Luckily, we have a vibrant community of advocates who, the minute they know something, they shout about it, and we're sharing all over the internet. And I'm so pleased about that.
No, I've noticed that since the last couple of years, definitely. I think it's increasing the amount of people that are talking about it who are similar to us in that sense. So yeah, I think it is great. Obviously, still a lot more work that needs to be done, but it's moving in the right direction in that sense. So I think it's definitely a good thing. So next question I normally ask is, do you have any other conditions or disorders or whatever phrasing you personally use, other than what you've already mentioned?
I am fully open to many things being co-occurrences. I sometimes wonder about dyslexia, but then I also wonder if the reason I misspell things is because I'm going at speed, which is slightly different to the decoding thing. I wonder whether sometimes my spelling is off, and I think that's a memory issue rather than a decoding thing. So I probably don't think I have dyslexia. I have issues with balance, but I don't think I'm dyspraxic. I think scoliosis is a co-occurrence. I have that. I also think I might have an underactive thyroid, and I wonder if that's also part of it. And I just think, you know, if over time unmanaged ADHD ends up manifesting itself as all sorts of things. You know, my dad was late diagnosed diabetes. Well, if he'd been managing his ADHD in a different way, i.e. not with sugar or whatever, he might not have ended up with that. And I just think, yeah, there's loads of I wonder about chronic fatigue, you know, and because I notice that. So yeah, I feel like I'm still on a journey of discovery about all the other gifts that go with this.
Yeah, no, totally understand all that. There's a lot of components, isn't there, related to it. So yeah, no, totally understand that. So this question is a bit of a controversial one for some. Do you see ADHD as a disability or not?
I see ADHD as a difference most of the time, and occasionally when I'm really in my dips, you know, we're spiky profiles, we've got high strengths and high challenges. When I'm in my high challenge for whatever reason, and that is very much about environment and task, and energy level and sleep and all the rest of it. So when the stars align in a bad way, yeah, sometimes I can see it as a disability. I can certainly understand it as a disability. And when I think about how much I have to think about it, then I sometimes see it as a disability. For me, different areas resonate for different people. And for me, working memory is where I really see it as a disability at times. And that upsets me sometimes, because I genuinely think, gosh, that's a 30% impairment that other people aren't struggling with. And yeah, you can have workarounds, but that's tough, The emotional flooding, I also think sometimes, like, that's really tough to navigate relationships with. So yeah, sometimes I see it as a disability, but I think knowledge is power. And once you start to understand it as a difference and are able to advocate for yourself and be clearer on your needs, it doesn't have to be a disability. It really doesn't. I love the hunter in a farmer's land analogy, because I genuinely think that, ADHDers were hunters. We have a purpose, and we still, they're still throwing up ADHD as 10% of the population for a reason. And you can see where we fit in the new world too. And I don't think we're mistakes. We're not, defected. I just think that we get disabled by our environments. We get disabled by, these sedentary, officey lifestyles and Zoom calls. And I just think, come on, mate, we got to move.
Yeah, no, fully agree with that. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I've done a few of these podcasts, and generally that's been the consensus. People have had that same sort of opinion. Generally, don't think every single one has. I think most people have, but I think that tends to be the coaches, the ones who are doing like the type of work we're doing, as well. So yeah, that's interesting. But no, fully agree with that. So
can I add something to that, Ben?
Of course you can. Yeah.
I think privilege plays a massive part, and so our intersecting identities make a massive difference. I was able to get through university and figure out my workarounds intuitively, and I actually managed to hold down 14 years of a job in education, which I now look back and realize, yeah, that worked for ADHD because you were always moving. But not everyone's as lucky, and there were definitely times where it was literally like I managed to jump over a ravine. Do you know what I mean? I could have fallen in. And I can see how if you have fallen in too many times, that you may feel it really is much more of a disability. If you've had addiction problems, if you've never managed to get back into employment, all of these things take away from your sense of agency. And I'm very, very lucky in the privilege I have had, that I have, managed to meander. When I burnt out, I had a partner who could sustain me while I figured out how to rebuild. Not everyone can do that. And some people are under a lot more pressure to go straight back into a work environment that doesn't fit them. And so I really want to own that. Like, asking about disability very much depends on privilege.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that as well. I think that's a very worthwhile thing to say. I mean, did you say 14 years, did you say?
In education, yeah.
I mean, that in itself, people who don't know anything about ADHD or neurodiversity would think what I'm about to say is weird, but that is a huge achievement. So
it wasn't the same job. If you can imagine ADHD, it was every 2 years getting a promotion, jumping ship, going to the next thing, or having a baby. I had 3 kids.
Yeah.
And I did all sorts of crazy projects with every single maternity leave, because I saw it as an opportunity. And the thought of just sitting with a load of mums talking about nappies was I have no words, Ben, for the boredom.
Yeah, but even so with that, it's still a big achievement. I mean, but again, you find a workaround, haven't you, with that? But that's you this, yeah, you've been privileged to do that, but you've still had the thought to do it anyway. You know what I mean? You could have just sat there in those meetings, as you said, those parent meetings and whatever, mother meetings, and but yeah, so you figured out what's best for you. So, but yeah, I mean, my longest job until I'm doing what I'm doing now was about 3.5 years, which for me was a massive achievement. So
I
yeah,
literally didn't have the same job for more than 3 years ever. I hear what you say.
yeah, I think 3 years seems to be for a lot of people the number. If you get to the 3 year mark, it seems to be. I don't know. I've seen quite a few people say a similar thing. I mean, a lot of people it's a few weeks, so it's a few months or whatever. But like, yeah, if you get to 3 years, I think that's quite a milestone. I think. But yeah, no, that's all good. So yeah, totally resonate with all that. Like I say, if you've got addictions or you've not got a supportive partner or supportive parents or whatever, then of course that can look very different, and you can just bounce around from one job to another because you're forced into it by your circumstances. So then you can end up just crashing and whatever. So I totally understand that point you made there as well.
And also, the thing about finding workarounds, not without a hell of a lot of shame. Like, motherhood for me was an absolute shame. Am I allowed to say?
Yeah.
Shit show. It was a
Yeah,
shit
yeah,
show.
yeah.
I've just said it now. Sorry, Ben.
No, it's all right.
It really, did I do it with, swag or any kind of sense of purpose? No, I felt like an utter failure. I didn't look back and go, gosh, you were really entrepreneurial. You set up a business here and you did a master's there and you moved your family to Spain. No, it was like, no, you're running from something and you're failing. And I can now reframe it, but shame shuts us down so badly.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Totally understand that. So next question is a very random one, just to throw in there. What's your favourite colour, if you have one? That is.
I like green. I really like Brazilian green. It makes me feel really positive.
There we go. Straightforward answer. Some people like have no idea. Some are very to the point. It's good to know. I mean, ask that one. I mean, I'm very strong with colours, so I like to see what people think. Some people don't really care, so there's a lot of different answers I can get there. So do you have any special interests, and if so, what are some of them, or all of them, I guess?
See, I find even that term tough because it's like what, this month,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, okay, so what do I like in general? I love long distance walking. I do quite like art, making art. Special interests, I would say, is changing the world. I think that's been a pretty consistent one. Education, coaching. I'm quite interested in business at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, but they do change.
Yeah. Totally.
I love languages. When I go abroad and I can speak the language, my brain lights up like a Christmas tree. Generally I like just being engaged.
Yeah. Now I understand that. And I mean, myself, obviously, I'm autistic and ADHD, so I can answer it from the special interest. I could say exactly what they are for me, but then I've got the other set, which falls into what I describe as my more ADHD side, is the flavor of the month sort of interest. So yeah, I could be Googling something for a week and then I forget about it for a year and stuff like that. So, but then I come back to it. So I started learning Spanish in lockdown. So I thought, right, I've always wanted to learn Spanish and Italian. I'm going to do it now. And then did it for a few weeks. So about a month, I did a bit each day. And then it must have been as work picked up during COVID. And then it sort of got lost in the shuffle. And I was like, so yeah. but it's still there. It's still there, waiting for me to come back to. So yeah,
I think language, because I was a Spanish teacher originally, and I think language learning without people is tough, and you have to learn for a purpose. The other thing I would say, just for neurodivergent brains, which is, let's face it, probably most people that learn languages, because you've got to be interested in the other, you've got to be interested in other cultures, you've got to be interested in how other people think. I think that's quite a horizon seeking trait, which is why I think you get more neurodivergents interested, particularly when you're from England or the UK and you go, well, everyone speaks English. You've got to be even more switched on and interested, right? So I would highly encourage. And then the thing to also normalize is you might not be able to read and write it, but you might be able to speak and hear it. Or you might be the opposite. You might be brilliant at speaking, at writing and reading it, but producing it is different because we're spiky,
Yeah, that's good to know. So, another bit of a random question. So, if you could meet any celebrity or famous person from the past or present, who would it be and why? Or you can say no one if you want to, or a couple of people.
God, that's really tricky.
Yeah, I've struggled with this one myself, to be fair.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? My brain just goes to what's recent. So like, I'm loving the podcast, The Rest is Politics, with Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart. And I actually would just love to just sit and chat and chew the fat with them, because I just find them brilliant. And they recently interviewed Julia Gillard, who was the ex-Prime Minister of Australia.
All right, yeah.
And I thought, I'd like to have a chat with you. She was just really cool, and I just thought, yeah, I really like the way she thinks, and I really like the way they interview on and chat about politics. When everything feels crazy at the moment, they just are very I find them very grounding, and they inspire me to want to like get involved rather than shy away, and that's a good place for me. I hate wanting to hide when I feel the world's chaotic. I always feel better when I want to roll my sleeves up. So that's my answer. It's not a great one.
No, but it's tough. It is tough, and I don't know if, correct me if I'm wrong, is this one of these flavour of the month questions for you then? Would you say that, or is it like I could ask you in a month's time or a year's time, you might have a different answer? Or
yeah, I definitely have a different answer in a month or two, but I think probably my mind went straight to someone like Barack Obama. But yeah, I and again, I think it's too big a question for like all the dead people I might want to talk to, because it's too much. My brain goes, there's too many people.
No, I agree with that one, definitely. So, yeah, I mean, this is, we could talk about whatever now for the rest of it. So, one thing I usually ask is whereabouts are you based? What sort of area of the country you're based?
I'm in Bristol.
Yep.
But I coach, nationwide.
Yeah, you do a lot of online, I presume.
Yeah, and actually my training, interestingly, I've started to do a 2-part training for my deep dive, because people in the States wanted to access it, which I thought was really cool. And it's making me realize, whilst they know a lot about ADHD in the US, they don't really have a progressive, I don't think they're as progressive as we are around neurodiversity in general, and definitely not about, autistic people, etc. And it kind of I think the neurodivergent thinkers out there in the States are copying on to that and kind of going, oh, what are they doing over there? Which is quite cool. So yeah, I'm getting that. And people from the Netherlands as well. And so that's nice when you start to realize where's the progressive narrative, and you realize you're in a country, because there's not many things to be proud of at the moment in the UK, and that is definitely one of them.
No, definitely, I agree, and it's good that you're getting, say, people from other countries interested in what you're doing, and yeah, I think I don't know, when it first happens, you're like, wow, someone from America wants to know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It's the feeling. I think I can imagine how you're feeling, being really good in that sense. And yeah, hopefully continue with that. So in terms of your work, I mean, yeah, if you want, feel free to talk about, what it is exactly you do, what exactly you offer within your services, and yeah, anything else around that really. If you want to explain that.
Thanks, Ben. Well, as with any ADHD, there's what I am doing and what I'm going to be doing. So I am an ADHD coach, predominantly working with late diagnosed women, but not exclusively.
Yeah.
And then I also train coaches in neurodiversity. And then I am aiming to set up an ADHD coach academy, the first of its kind in the UK. There's there's a couple of offerings in the US, one of which I've trained at, and I feel like we need one here. And I'm actually partnering at the moment with somebody who is about to emigrate to New Zealand, where they're also having a very new developing infrastructure around neurodiversity. And so hopefully it's going to be quite international in feel. And we're just currently piloting the ADHD course. And I'm absolutely loving it. You know, when you sometimes get those moments, I've had it about 2 or 3 times in November, which is amazing, where you do a piece of work, whether it's that or I went and did a speaking event at a school, and you kind of go, I'm not looking to die tomorrow, clearly, but if I did, I feel like I did what I was here to do, and that's an amazing feeling.
100%. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on that one. Yeah. That's good to hear. And I think with what you're doing with the ADHD coaching side of it, sounds really interesting and much needed. And yeah, I'm sure you do well with it. And yeah, love to hear more about it once you get further down the line with it and see how you progress with it. So,
Thank you.
so yeah, just in terms of ADHD, I mean, we'll start to wrap it up in a bit. But in terms of ADHD, is there anything you think? Well, there's a million things, but is there anything you want to particularly talk about? I'm going to ask you a few questions. I mean, one thing I will ask you actually is just in terms of like sleep patterns and things like. Because I've had a few chats with others about this. A lot of people with ADHD are night owls like myself, but of course, there's some that are not. And if I remember rightly, you're more the morning person. Am I right in thinking with that one? Oh, well, I say morning person. I don't mean like 5 o'clock in the morning, but not like going to bed at 3 a.m. So where do you fit on that scale? Or are you normal in the sense of the get up at, I don't know, 7, 8, or 9 or something like that? Where do you fit in on that
Well,
scale?
again, I think this is slightly down to how much can you organize your day that way. I can't. I've got 3 kids who have to go to school, so
Yeah,
I have to be a morning person. Am I a morning person? No. It takes a while to crank the machine, and I've now got my method. And I am currently trialing some meds which help a little bit. I definitely am someone who activates fairly well, but deactivating is tough. So I call it landing the plane. Landing my plane to go to bed is a process. Sometimes, worthy of a stunt woman, it feels like, and once you know that and you accept it and stop fighting it, that helps a lot. But anytime I try to just go to sleep, it will end badly and in a lot of frustration. So I tend to stay up a bit later, do a kind of routine or process. But, I get bored of that, and then I turn into a gremlin and then find it's 1 a.m. and go, oh, what have you done there? And get caught out, because we always, like to rip the tablecloth from the routine. That's part of what we do. But again, when you can accept that and then notice and then rectify it, it's less shaming, and you can sort of find your balance faster, I think. One of the biggest things for me about sleep is I've actually found the sleep in Spotify. There's just a thing called sleep, and I will listen to that. If I wake up at 4, I sometimes find it very hard to then switch my brain back off.
Yeah.
And so I listen to that. I think they call it brown noise, not white noise. And that is, oh my goodness, it's like having a dummy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it just pacifies me. And I love that. Knowing I've got that the anxiety of not sleeping is kind of gone now.
Right, that's really good then. It's really good. Yeah, I know a few people with ADHD or neurodiversity in general have said about using tools like that, which does help them. So yeah, I think that's interesting. Do you just on this, because it makes me laugh? If you were to say, right, I'm going to go for half an hour nap, would you be able to do that or not?
Probably not. But what I do think, I do know people where it's amazing and they can. My husband used to go to sleep in the toilets of his office, and get a toilet roll and put it in between his shoulder and literally just go to sleep on the toilet roll. And I thought, God, I wish I could do that. Also, isn't that that's very devious? But I think I used to do it in Spain. I think I can do it in heat better.
Yeah.
I can do it when I've got no work on and there's no things to do. But when I'm in task mode, I find it really tough.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I have to let go of wanting to sleep. If I have no expectation about sleep, it might happen. If I think I've only got 5 minutes and this is how much I've got to do, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the exact same. Yeah. I trick myself and say, right, I'll have half an hour now, and then I spend about 28 minutes trying to get to sleep, and then 2 minutes to sleep, then I'm up again. I'm just like, well, that was pointless.
But I'm not sure it is, Ben, because those 2 minutes were probably blooming brilliant, right? I'll take it. I'll take the 2.
Well, I'm not sure, but yeah, I feel more worse and well, I don't know. It's weird, but anyway. But as you were saying, if I could nod on the settee, I could nod fairly quickly on the settee because there's no expectations, as you've just said. So exactly that, which is annoying because then you've got to trick yourself and be like, well, I don't care if I go to sleep, and then even though you know you want to, and you're like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, and then at the same time, you've got this book that you really want to read. I kill books because I open them and about 2 pages in, I've read the same thing for 10 million times, and my head's falling into the book, and I'm like, right, you're never going to read ever again, are you?
Yeah, I do that as well. I get what you mean with that one. Yeah, yeah. So, is there anything else? Just looking, time, etc. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I guess ADHD wise, what you do work wise, anything in between.
Yeah, just to say that, I'm really aware that not everyone has access to work funding. Not everyone's in work, so you have to be in work or self-employed to get that. And the accessing support is just a bit all over the show. So if that is you, there is my TED talk, ADHD Finding My Gold, is a free resource. And the other thing is that I also run a support group with ADHD UK, which is absolutely free to access. You do have to register and get yourself a ticket, but it's free. And my next one is actually this Monday afternoon. I think it's 1:30, and I do that monthly. And there's also some other amazing ADHD and ADHD, so ADHD and autistic coaches who run things like Ask a Coach, or also just support groups like myself. And all of that is free. And I think the work that ADHD UK do is amazing. So please access that work.
Yeah, perfect. And yeah, I mean, so for them to access that, they just go on the website, ADHD UK website, I presume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a million things we could talk about, to be fair, but we'll save that for another day. So yeah, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. And thanks for everyone listening, and we'll catch you again next time.